What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Code Peterson tutorial. We're doing some Adobe Illustrator, and we're using some of the features in Illustrator along with some of the features of Adobe fonts to create a monogram or a letter mark. Probably a monogram is the best way to explain it. A little graphic design, a little identity design, some logo design, and just making a logo out of letters. Now, to begin with, I have Adobe Fonts open here, and you can use any source where you like to get your typefaces from. If I go up here to Browse All, I'm just using this Adobe Fonts because I have Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, so it works out well. And you can either search in the top area here for variable fonts, or you can go on the left-hand side when you're in the Browse All section and there's this fonts technology and it says variable fonts in there. And if I click on that, or if I search for that, we will find typefaces that allow us to change the width and height and the thickness and other attributes like the angle and the diagonals, all of that stuff for typefaces without actually distorting the stroke. Sometimes when you're trying to free transform your typefaces in Photoshop or Illustrator, and if you're not scaling it, if the width and the height are not growing at the same proportions scaled, then you're going to have a higher contrast between thin and thick strokes through the lines of your type, which we don't want because it makes your type look different. But if we're making a monogram and we're trying to combine different letters together into a logo, some of them many times will have to be wider or narrower or a different size. We don't want it to look like it's two different letters. We want it to look like it's all consistent, part of the same design. So to show you what that looks like in here in Adobe Fonts, like there's this one that says Go Bananas. And when I hover over it, you can see the animation of what you can change. There's a little slide bar over here. I'll click on that. And then you can see over here on the right-hand side that what it's going to allow you to change. Now, some of them will let you change the width or the height or the weight or maybe even the angle of it, all these different characteristics. But this one here, it looks like is only going to allow us to change the width and the weight of the typeface. So if I go here and I change this, this is a one, so this is as narrow as it goes. If I drag it all the way to the right, it spreads everything out. But when it does that, we don't see these distorting from the height of this crossbar right here. They stay proportionally the same width all the way across, which is kind of cool. It's like they're basically making these letters out of shapes that are connected together. Now, again, if I go down here to the weight, then I can change this. And it just gives you these variable typefaces or these variable fonts give you just almost countless variations of the typeface that you can use without distorting your typeface, and they're kind of cool. So when I'm going to make a logo that is out of letters, that's one of the things I'm kind of looking for first is there a variable typeface that works with what I'm doing if I'm not going to just create the letters myself using the pen tool and the shape tools and all that. Our first example here, I can go to my type tool and the typeface that I'm looking for is Organetto. And it really doesn't matter if I choose regular or what because it's variable and we can change all the attributes anyway, but I'm going to choose regular in here and I will go ahead and make this size be pretty large. College football actually starts tomorrow, at this time of year, at the time of this recording. There's not a full slate of games, but there are a few games to watch. So, with the spirit of college football, and because a lot of these remind me kind of vintage style sports logos, thought maybe we would kind of make one that is in the spirit of Notre Dame. So we have our N on here, and with that selected, Now I'll change, make sure that that dark blue is showing up in there. And then over here on the right-hand side, we have that variable font option, and it's kind of hidden there. If you're not looking for it, you'll miss it oftentimes. For the width here, we'll have it be as narrow as possible. And then for the weight, let's maybe try 15 to begin with. So there is our first letter that we have created. Now, if I hold down Alt and I click and drag, I bring this over, and then I will change this one to a capital D, but I want the D to overlap, kind of like the traditional Notre Dame logo where you have the letters overlapping. Highlight my type and change the width of this to 100. Now we can see we have this D stretched out, but it's not distorting, the edge curve over here or this vertical line over on this other side, and the stroke's all the same. Now, if I look at this over here, it's going to be too tall to really combine onto my logo, so I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit. And I'll try to get it to where I have a little bit of space here between the top of the D and this little angle here, and the same with that area down at the bottom. Get just a little bit smaller. Okay, I'll select both of those objects, and then I'm going to center those. I may need to change the height of the letter D to be just a little bit taller. And that looks pretty good. Now, we resize this to where it fills up most of our space in here. And when I shrunk this letter D down, it's a narrower stroke than that letter N because technically the size of that typeface is smaller. I can go back in here to my variable fonts, and I need to change the weight just a little bit more until it kind of more matches the width of the letter N. And this is our first kind of example of this logo. So here it kind of looks like the branding iron style of a design you might have from back in the day. And then I will also use my artboard tool. And by alt clicking and dragging, I'll bring this down here. We'll kind of have two different examples of our logos that we're doing this with. So this is one typeface. And then if I go down here to this next one, maybe for this one, I'm going to go with something like BioRhyme Regular. This is another example of a variable font. And I don't know, this kind of reminds me of some of those New York logos that you see with the combination of those. So I'll make that a little bit bigger there. And then I'll go over here to the variable fonts. And for the width, I want this to be narrow as possible. And then the weight, I'll bring the weight of this one down also. Okay, then I'll make a copy of that. And then this one will be a capital Y. And we'll leave this be the same height, but I do think we'll need to probably change the width of this to be wider. And maybe just bring that weight down just a little. There we go. That'll work well. We'll overlap these two letters like so. Center that up, and we'll bring that here into the middle. So here's another kind of an example of a typeface of another style that we could do something like that with. Okay, now for the next example of how we could combine these logos, I'll duplicate this one up here. I'll duplicate this one down here. And this one's pretty easy to do for the most part. Now, if I select both of these letters here and I change it to where there's a stroke around the outside of it, and I increase this, we can look at this and you'll see where we start to get some kind of weird options going on with the stroke around the outside of that letter. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where these letters are kind of made out of shapes that are resizing, which allows us to distort those. So for the time being right now, I'm going to make that stroke invisible there. And what I can do is I can select both of these, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to create outlines. And you'll see when we do that, we have those little loops kind of around there. We don't see it with the letter D, but we see it with the letter N in this case. And then I'm going to go here to Pathfinder and click to Unite. And then that is going to turn this whole thing into one shape. We can go to the stroke here. And add this to our shape, and we don't get those weird kind of blotches throughout the shape in there. We can also go here to the stroke and we can change it to where this is on outside of the letter if we want. And now we have just kind of this solid shape that's on here with the outline. Kind of reminds me of the old letter sweaters that they used to wear back in the day. I'll highlight both of these, and then I'm going to right click and create outlines. And you'll see this one here, we have a lot of those kind of weird shapes in there that we need to get rid of. So we'll go to Pathfinder and it combines them into one shape. And you know what, I should probably make these be a dark blue also. And then maybe this one right here for the stroke, I'm going to go with a gray so we can see it. All right, and then we'll add that there, and we will make sure that is on the outside of our shapes also. Okay, so this is kind of our basic logo here. Here we have our, it's overlapping, you know, and it looks kind of cool. But then there's some things we can do in Illustrator that make it look a little bit more interesting. So for that, let's actually duplicate this first artboard again. I'll bring it over here. And then this one here, I'm going to do the same thing, make a copy of that NY. I want to do something separate with these. So it's actually going to work best with this example. Like if I select the D first and I create outlines, and then I go up here to the N and I right click and create outlines. And you'll see here we don't have this option for us to combine those. So if I control copy that and I control shift V to paste it over the top, and then I select both of those, the two letter ends are stacked on top of each other, and then I pathfind, then it'll work that way. I could also go in and just like use the scissor tool and remove those two loops in there, but this is just kind of the fastest way to do that. Then up here, I'm going to keep the letter N this color. I can go in here to this letter D. I could actually go here to the fill, and I will change to that gold color. And if I select both of these here, then I can go up to Object and Intertwine and Make. Now, sometimes you have to use this lasso tool to select the area, but with this one here, it's going to let me hover over it, and it's going to kind of shade that area out of it. So we could see that letter D is behind the N, but if I click there, now it's over it. Then I'll skip this one and I'll go here, and it's over the top, and then it's under, and then it's over the top, and then it's under. And so now we have this different variation of a logo between two colors where it shows the overlapping of those. It's kind of cool. And then this one here, we'll do the same thing as above. We're going to create outlines, copy, and then paste. We'll select both and we'll combine those, and then we'll go down here to the Y and we will create outlines, copy, and paste in place. And then we will go to Pathfinder and click to unite there. All right, so here are those examples. And then maybe on this one, we're going to select the Y, and you get a little more interesting opportunities with these typefaces that have serifs on here. So on this one, I'll change the fill, and I think that's the gray I want to use. And then I'll select both of these and then go up here to Object and Intertwine and Make. And this one, we'll have it go behind, then over, then behind, then over, and then behind. And so this gives us that logo where things are kind of more interwoven in between there. A little more interesting to look at than just this one up here with the N and the D, just because you have these extra items that you can kind of go around, which are kind of cool. All right, then the next thing we have, and this will be the last example that I'll show you what we can do with this. We'll make a copy of this one right here, and we'll make a copy of this one down here. All right. Now, sometimes we want to add a stroke around the outside and we still want to do the intertwine. And sometimes you need to undo the intertwine feature. And people ask, is there a way to do that? We could just highlight those two objects, and then we'll go up here to Object, go down to our intertwine, and then we'll select Release. Have this on here now. If we select our letter D and we go to the fill and we match that in there, now I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to go to select the stroke and go with that orange. And let's make sure we have this going on the outside of the letters. And we'll go something like that, where I have just a little bit of space there in between and they're not overlapping. Okay, now I can select these and then go up here to Object and Intertwine and Make. And then this time we have the N over the top. Select this one, we'll skip that one, go this one, then it goes behind that. And when you have the stroke in there like that, it just kind of adds a little something extra to it. And then finally, this one down here, we'll select this one here, go to Object and Intertwine and Release. May need to give myself just a little bit more room here for that object. Select, change the fill, make it be the dark color. Then we'll select both of those, go to stroke setting. Here we go. Once that stroke is around the outside, we'll select both, go back up to object, then we'll go to intertwine, and then make. Select that, goes over, under, goes over, goes under. And that looks pretty cool. Interlocking those two letters. I know I said that's the last one I would show you. Here's kind of a little bonus thing too, because sometimes you might want to make a logo, and we're actually only going to change the color of these. So sometimes people might say, what if I want only there to be one color? Like if I just have a one color option for this, and I want it to look kind of more stenciled on there, but also interlocking. So then what you could do is we could select that and then change the stroke. Here we go. Change it to white. And then now you can see we have those spaces in there. So if you wanted to do that further, you could select that logo on there, and then you could go up to object, and then you could go path and outline stroke. And then you could go to your pathfinder and remove the stroke from the shape underneath it, if that kind of makes sense to you. But here it at least shows you what that would look like if you were going in this route, or if you're making it a PNG, you could do that and then just erase the white border that goes around it. Either way, depending on what media you're trying to make this for. And this one down here, I'll do the same thing. I'll switch that. And then you still have the interlocking, but it gives you an option in case you're doing this something like on a t-shirt or a flag or something, and you can only print one color onto it. But there it is. Some ways to make a monogram logo using that intertwine tool, and also using those variable font options to let you create letters so they're not just overlapping each other. Instead, you can kind of make them a little more intricate and interesting to look at. Let me know what you think in the comments, or if you want me to make anything else like this. Appreciate you taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you on another tutorial video.